Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to talk with this person. My name is Julie Hogue, and I'm with Vegetarians and Meat Lovers Split Table Recipes podcast. And I have another amazing cookbook author to talk with today and introduce you to. Her name is Rose Benjamin, and her cookbooks are Rose's Family Favorites, a delightful mix of 101 kosher, Asian, Continental, and Jewish dishes, as well as dips and desserts. And she can be found on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Pinterest. Welcome, Rose. I'm so excited to talk with you.
Likewise. Thank you for having me, Julie. Much appreciated.
Now, I found you on Instagram because I saw your post. I think I searched like hashtag cookbooks or something like that. And so that's how I found you, which is really a fun way to find people who are creating content in certain categories. Now, you said that you post on Instagram and Reel. So what kind of videos do you tend to put on Instagram?
Well, basically, I've got a collection, as you mentioned, of 101 recipes. So from time to time, I like to sort of segment them between the desserts, the salads, my Asian cuisines, my Jewish cuisines, and I'll sort of get one picture up where I've got all the ingredients. And the second upload would be basically me cooking the recipe. And the third load would be me then the presentation, the plating. So I like to usually have them in 3 sets. So it sort of gives the consumer the different stages of the recipe being made.
Very nice. And then before I forget to mention, she has shared with us one of her recipes. Now, how do you say this? It's fried potato cutlets. How do you say the word? Aloo chop? I'm not sure how to say
aloo chop. Yes, aloo chop.
Which sounds amazing. And it's really interesting. So everyone check down in the podcast show notes so you can see one of her recipes and try them out. So tell me more about your cookbook. Like what is it about and what drew you to want to create this?
Well, I've been collecting recipes, I'd say maybe for over 40 years.
Mm.
And they're basically recipes from my grandmother, great-grandmother, my mother-in-law, my mother, aunts, and very close friends of mine. I've been collecting them on scraps of paper over the years. And COVID came, right? So we were all stuck indoors. So it's a COVID project, you could say. And we were all stuck indoors. And
Yeah.
my dad sort of nudged me and he said, what better time now? Instead of having your bits of paper here and there, put your book together. And he says, you keep putting it off, you keep putting off. And I said, but he said, there's no buts, do it. So between my dad and my children, Andrew and Aaron, they sort of inspired me. And they said, look, Mom, what have you got to lose? You're home doing nothing anyway now. So when my family got to hear about more recipes came in. So it was like 65 recipes. And then more recipes started swarming in. So everybody was like so happy, like, wow, she's going to get it done. And we'll have all our recipes documented and kept there like for keepsake. You know what I'm saying? It's like a legacy of all the recipes. And then one thing led to another. And I pushed through it. It wasn't easy. But the 2 years, now when I look at the book, the 2 years was well worth the time and effort that went into it. So I'm very proud of the production.
Absolutely. And now you have something that your entire family would cherish. It's like almost like an heirloom, right? Like it's something that you can share with future generations, younger generations, older generations, and people with the world. Like that's a really cool thing. And, COVID was horrible, but so many people like you took advantage of that time and created something amazing. And so that is wonderful to see something wonderful come out of such a horrible thing that happened in our world.
Yeah, that's a nice way of seeing it. Correct. That's absolutely.
And so when you were creating these, you had to probably learn photography, right? So you had to learn how to take pictures. That would be something that would go in a cookbook. Tell me about that journey too.
Well, we had a lot of takes on that. I think that's also why it took 2 years. Originally, I had like the recipe and I had like a lot of like maybe the chicken going in the broth and chopping up the chicken and I had the ingredients and all. And then we thought it was just a bit too messy. And then I had the input from my father and my children. And they said, we want it just classic, just the plating. And maybe if you had your Iraqi Jewish foods where it gets a bit complicated, where you need to see the challah braiding of the bread or like aloo chop, for example, how you actually get the potato and the mincemeat inside and get it so perfectly, circular and stuff like that. So I had a couple of those images in. And we redid. Like I took a photo, and if it didn't look right, sat back down there and redid it again. Had the angling. Oh gosh, I tell you the amount of those light reels and the photography and the props that came in. I mean, it's remarkable, but I had to make sure it was right. Like, some dishes came out, you had the spot of oil on the side. No, redo.
Yes.
But there was a lot of passion and love in it. So it was troublesome, but we overcame those hurdles because of the end, the end product we're looking towards.
Right, right. Like, I think it seems like so daunting and such a huge, overwhelming thing as you're doing it. But when you see it done, you realize, okay, this was all worth it, right?
Absolutely. Do it all over again.
So, are you mainly using recipes you've made multiple times, or are you creating recipes that you need to perfect? Like, what was your cookbook experience with creating recipes in that way?
Well, if I touch on the Asian segment, for example, and being kosher and of Jewish background, we had certain dietary laws which we had to uphold to. Like we don't have crustaceans, so
Hmm.
anything without scales or fins, we can't have it. So if
Hmm.
we have, let's say, seafood in a lot of the local recipes in Singapore, whether it's a laksa or whether it's the mirubos, where they're noodle dishes, a lot of their recipes would have prawns or shrimps into the bases. So I actually
Mm.
took that out and improvised by using anchovies.
Oh, sure.
So that gave it that seafood kind of taste to it. But if I
Hmm.
wanted it vegan, I put cashew nuts or almonds. So there was a lot of improvisation along the way. So I say a lot of the recipes are homebound. I mean, it came from myself within the family. But you can't really go outside and get them, or like samba. I'm not sure whether you've got a white Asian restaurants where you're from, but in Singapore, I mean Asian. So I had to sort of kosher all the recipes that way. There were also some recipes like lasagna because we can't mix our milk and our meat. So I wanted to be
Okay.
able to have a lasagna. So what I did was we made a
Yeah.
lasagna and I used the non-dairy cheese. Like you get the
Mm.
cheese, the diet cheese, the plant-based,
Yeah.
so non-dairy cheese. And I tell you, it's better than having original lasagna with the real milk and the meat. So there were a lot of changes and varieties that we sort of played around with.
So is that like soy cheese kind of a product?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah, yeah.
yes.
Yes, we're getting
And
more and more of those over here, which is really nice option.
yes, and I feel it's a lot lighter on the stomach as well. I mean, I think it's amazing.
It is. It's great. And for people who can't have dairy, people here who do eat dairy, but then they have an allergy, because like my father-in-law
Yes,
developed a dairy allergy later in life. And so he had to switch over to all the non-dairy. And, it's like more and more products are becoming available here. They didn't used to be available years ago. So it's
yes,
kind of relatively new here.
yes.
And so if you were making a new recipe, how many times would you make it before you said, this is it, this is ready to go in the book?
Well, I tell you what, I think I made my quiche recipe about 10 times. A simple quiche recipe about 10 times. Like crustless, it was a crustless quiche recipe with broccoli. And you think, oh, that was so easy to do. There's that you don't have to even think about it. But I tell you, me about 10 takes before we finally got it right with the right
Wow.
amount of cheese and the right amount of broccoli, how to cut them, the florets and things like that. So it just endured. And then there's another recipe, the fish biryani, which is an Indian recipe. I
Mm.
tried doing that a couple of times as well and got the end product and with the right measurements, and it was good to go. So I didn't really put a limit and say, okay, I'm just doing it 2 times and that's it. Tried
Right.
as much. And my father was a big critic. Nope, this doesn't taste right. Nope, that's sort of a bit too much. So we redid it a couple of times, a
He
few
was the taste
takes.
one of the taste testers, right?
Yes, yes, yes. And then you look at him and you go, "So, Dad, how?" And he like sort of looks at you and you go, "Okay."
Do you have a favorite recipe in the book, or is that like way too hard to pick?
Actually, I do. One of my favorite recipes is from the Jewish section. It's a chetani,
Mm.
and the irony is I don't really like onions,
Oh.
but but this recipe has about 2 kilos worth of onions in it.
Oh yeah.
Uh, yes, but the spices, it's a mix of Iraqi cuisine mixed with a bit of the Indian flair in it because a lot of the Jews from Baghdad settled in India and they
Okay.
sort of merged the two spices before they came on to Singapore. So those are a lot of my ancestors' recipes, and it happens to be one of my favorites. So
Oh,
it takes a
that's
long time to
awesome.
cook, about 2.5 hours, 2 to 3 hours, so you
Ooh.
get all the onions simmered, but it's worth every bite.
Yeah, some of those recipes can be pretty hefty, I know. And you can take you a couple hours to make something. That is a a huge commitment, but that usually ends up tasting so good that it's just worth it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so tell me about how someone would order your cookbook if they wanted to purchase one.
Well, basically, the book is self-published. I wanted to do that because I would have contact with the end user, opposed to having it going through a publication company. Of course, it would have moved a lot quicker. I would assume through the bookstores and things like that. But I wanted to know where the book was going, and I still have that rapport with the consumer now. Like they'll WhatsApp me or they'll email me and they'll tell me, "Hey, Rose, I added this, but it didn't really work out." Or if I don't have this, what substitute can I use? So there's that ongoing. It lives on. It's not just the book, close the chapter, sell it, and buy. It's continuing, which I really wanted. So basically, the book is available on all my social media platforms, whether it's Instagram, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, on YouTube, Pinterest, as you mentioned, and they can private message me. My contact number is there, or WhatsApp me, and I let them know that it's selling for Singapore $90, and then we sort of speak about the postage, etc., and happy cooking on the way.
Very nice. And so on all those platforms, you are Rose's family favorites if people want to search for you, correct?
That's right. Rose's family favorites. Yes, absolutely.
And I will put the links down in the podcast show notes so people can find it. And then you have a special deal, right?
Yes.
Tell us about your deal.
Well, I wanted to sort of I'm so fascinated to be like on this side of the world, like in Singapore, and being able to, speak to you and stuff like that. And it's just amazing what you've done when you've created this whole avenue for, people, your side of the world to actually, hold this, we're known as the little red dot on the map, Singapore. And, yeah. And it's just amazing. Like on Instagram, I have so many people following me from so many different diversified parts of the world. I'm saying, oh my gosh, this is incredible. But I wanna be able to get the consumer to speak to me, and I wanted to sort of have them quote something from our podcast interview today, so I'd know that they were really listening, and I wanted them to be at liberty to sort of benefit from it. And if they were to mention Rose 101 when they communicated with me, then I'd know, hey, they've been listening to you, and they'd mentioned the recipe that we spoke about, which was aloo chop. And I like to offer them a 10% discount on the book.
That is Instacart, groceries delivered in as little as 1 hour. Free delivery on your first order, $35. Save yourself that trip to the market. Instacart delivers groceries in as fast as 1 hour. They connect you with personal shoppers in your area to shop and deliver groceries from your favorite stores. Free delivery on your very first order over $35. Following the link in the show notes lets Instacart know we sent you and help support our show. Multiple stores available. Shop all of your favorites on a single order. The products you love from your local stores. Hand selected by shoppers based on your preferences. Delivery to your door in as fast as 1 hour. Instacart highlights deals to help you save money. Don't we all want that? Find everything you usually buy and get smart suggestions for new items. Instacart picks the freshest produce and keeps your eggs safe too. Woohoo! Those are things I want. Try it out today. You will love it. It's wonderful. Absolutely. So people, if you want that, you got to do that and you can get the discount and get the book, which is totally amazing. And so what are your future plans as far as speaking about your book? Are you doing interviews? Are you reaching out other ways? Like, how do you advertise your book other than, or is social media your main way to do that?
I've had a few write-ups in the Jewish news in Australia. So I've had 2 features in Melbourne and in Sydney.
Nice.
They interviewed me there. Funny you mentioned that today. I was actually at Channel News Asia 938, which is Media Corp, Singapore's broadcasting channel. So they interviewed me there today with Melanie Olivero. So that was an amazing interview. So I was all hyped up. I said, yes, I'm going to meet with you tonight as well. So that really went well. I'm also communicating with the Jews of Jewish Society in New York, where they actually compile a lot of the heritage foods, being of Iraqi descent. So they're sort of trying to time the timeline so we don't lose that heritage of our ancestors and stuff like that. So I spoke to someone last week, and we're trying to get something to sort of tie in as well to feature and the Jewish Iraqi cuisines that I've sort of put together as well for my grandparents.
That's
So
very
yeah, but
awesome.
yeah, so it's funny. Like I go out somewhere and they go, "That's the cooking lady," you see, and that's the cooking lady. So it's really nice. It's nice to have that. I mean, I think it's something that I wanted to give, and I think the Jewish community are really happy because it's all kosher. And
Yes.
having said that, even if you were not Jewish, though, I mean, the diversified recipes that are in the book, it's amazing.
Right. Like, yeah, like anybody can eat them. Anybody can make them. It doesn't have to.
Absolutely. Yes, yes, yes.
Right. And it's really fun to try different foods. Like, I think it's really fun to try different foods and try to make different foods from around the world. And you can do it in your home. And with a cookbook like this, you can do that. It's really fun way to explore different tastes and flavors and textures
Yes.
and all of that.
Yes. And I
Yeah.
wanted it to be easy for the consumer. Like, when you had a recipe from your grandma, she'll say, I said, how much? Oh, a handful of this and a pinch of that. And how do you work with a handful and a pinch and stuff like that? So we had to cook everything all over again. And I made sure, like I put in the book, and I said, it's not a tablespoon or an eating spoon. The spoon that I'm using is an actual half a teaspoon and a 1 teaspoon, and the cup to measure the rice. So I really try to think of everything. Like we grew up with all the local ingredients, like whether it's a pandan leaf or candle nuts or gula melaka. Like, someone from out of Asia will say, what on earth is she talking about? But
Exactly.
yeah, so I had the pictures and improvisions of what it is. So if you went to your Asian supermarkets, or if you're in London and you go to Chinatown, you'd be able to get it. Or in America, in Chinatown, you'd have those local shops. So it's really easy to tap into the recipe and say, you know what, I'm able to do it. I'm able to do it.
Right. Because, like, for me, I would need education on what those things are because I don't know what they are. Like, I
Yes.
don't, it's not just
No.
commonly known to me. So, yeah, you have to make it palatable for people's knowledge across the world. And so
Yes.
that's great that you did that. That's so needed to be able to make the recipes. Because my grandma was the same way. Oh, just put a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Well, you need to be
Right?
more specific.
I know, right? So but their food turned out delicious. But nowadays, you say a handful of this, and my daughter will tell me, Mom, how many spoons? How much
Yeah.
how much curry powder am I putting in? But it's really very user friendly. I've got all the tips down on the bottom, and even if you made your chili, like how to put them into little ice cubes and freeze them so you have them for the next batch. So I put little bits in, little treats here and there for the customer, the person who's going to cook, to see, hey, wow, it's enjoyable.
Right. So you have some like tips and advice embedded in it so that people can be like, oh, okay, this is how I could do this and make this happen.
Yes, yes. Like if you can't get candle nuts, like candle nuts is a hard sort of ingredient that goes into a lot of the local Asian cuisines. But if you had an almond, so I would say two almonds is equivalent to one candle nut. So that texture that you're getting in your
Oh,
almond would be equivalent. Like, in the European countries, oh, you can get an almond anywhere, but a candle nut you
yes.
couldn't.
Right. Like
So
I've
I
never
had that.
even heard of a candle nut, but of course I've heard of almonds. We have almonds all over the place here.
Yes, yes, yes. See?
Substitutions are good too. Absolutely.
Yes.
And so how do you actually go about printing it? Like that seems like seems hard to me. Like how would you actually did you use a service and you just have a whole bunch of books already ready to ship out?
I got a printing company in
Mm.
Singapore.
Okay.
So I didn't outsource it. Everything was locally. I mean, I had the editors, I had the proofreaders all locally sorted out, and my
Okay.
printer was really very helpful. I sort of told him what kind of designs I wanted. My children sort of inputted. Andrew and Aaron really helped a lot. My dad as well. Sort of told Eric, this is what I want, the clean pages, simple, nothing too
Mhm.
fussy. And the question was, do I print 1,000 books or do I print 500 books?
Right.
So in the end, I went with the 500. I said I'd rather have less, and at least I know who's going to be getting it. We'll move it, and look, Bisrat Hashem, if I need to do a second print, I'm happy to do that.
Oh, exactly. Now, how did you pick out your cover? Like that's always such a challenge, I feel like, to pick out what's going to go on the cover. How did you go about
I
that?
know with 101 recipes, I tell you, it was no easy task.
No.
I wanted I wanted to make sure I could feature foods from the four categories. So the salads,
Mm,
the
mhm.
desserts, the Asian, and the Iraqi Sephardic section. So basically, I chose the ones that really like, stood out. Like I wanted not only for myself, but I wanted someone to like look in the book and say, oh, halal. Okay, we know that. I think everybody knows halal. So we had the halal, and that was really a spectacular photo. The mi robust was the Asian. And then we
Mm.
had the cheese puff, and then we had the amaretto cake is just to die for. So I said I had the amaretto cake on. So
Yes.
I think it worked out. I mean, what do you think when you saw it?
Oh, I think it looks gorgeous for sure. I mean, it's fun to see a bunch of different types of foods in the cover because some people go with just like one photo, on the cover,
Yeah.
but you have multiple there. So yeah, I think it works great.
Yeah, my favorite color is green, so it had to be Rose's family favorites in the green. So that wasn't difficult to think of. And in fact, my daughter came up with the title.
Okay.
So yeah, we were toying around with different. She said, Mom, it's all the family favorites. So Rose's family favorites. I said, okay. So, and it's
That
really
totally
lovely. So,
works.
yeah, it totally worked. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So, do you think you would make another cookbook, or is that like sound way too daunting at this point, or you totally just want to focus on this one?
Funny you mentioned that. I mean, this book initially started with 65 recipes, right? And it went up to
Mhm.
101. Now I've already started getting more recipes.
Mm.
So I wouldn't be surprised if Rosa's Family Favorites Volume 2 might be on the shelves. Yes, I think so. I mean, there's like no limit. Like you're cooking every day, right? Like we cook every day, like
Mhm.
lunch, dinner, lunch, dinner. So I think there is a possibility, my dear.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you ever decide to put it on something like Amazon, you can upload it there too. There's just so many options now with being able to create your own content that if you ever wanted to go there, you already have the book ready to upload. So that's the beautiful part too, is that if you ever find you want to expand in that way, you certainly could very easily do that. But I totally get
Yes.
your wanting to have a communication, like a personal contact and communication,
Yeah.
ongoing communication with your customers. I totally get that. And it's very personal. And I think that's a very inspiring way to create your cookbook connection with people. I think that's just fantastic.
Yeah, I think I was able to do because 500 isn't a large number. I guess if I went into thousands, oh my goodness, that's going to really be a task. But with the
Right.
500, it's like I know each and every person thus far who's purchased my book, which I think it's so lovely. And I
Hmm.
have
Yeah.
pictures with them. The ones who have brought it overseas, I say, take a picture, send it to me. So it's like a family. It's really developed like a
Yes.
family.
It's very personal. And I like how you are responsive if someone had a question or, this didn't work out or what do I need? Like you have the ongoing conversation with them.
Yes, yes.
That's very cool. And so do you think you would keep the same four topics in the new cookbook or would you add in anything else, any other categories of foods?
I think generally this is what holds close to my heart. Like, I love my desserts. So that
Yes.
stays in. My salads, it's my Iraqi Jewish food. I mean, everyone was like questioning, oh, did you put this one in? And did you put the arumakala in? And did you put the ajar in? And they were teasing me and saying, what didn't I put in? So I think on the Jewish aspect, I covered pretty much everything, I would say 99%. But with
Okay.
regard to the Asian and continental, there's so much. You can have a
Yes.
salmon today and have it with teriyaki, or drizzle it with some honey and or add some mustard on the side, and voila, it becomes another amazing recipe. On a bed of quinoa and stuff like that. So there's just no end to what you can create and come up with. So I'm open to it.
Yes, and that's also great too because it's so many options for creating future cookbooks. Like your options are just endless, like there's so many different things and different recipes, different ways to make them that just an endless
Yes,
content can
yes,
happen.
yes.
Absolutely. And then have you ever do you sign your cookbooks or do anything fun like that? Yeah, yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. In
Yes.
fact, there was another lady today who there were actually two people who bought my book because they heard me on the channel News Asia. So shortly after that, they reached out
Mm.
and they said, "Oh, we need it autographed. Please come and autograph it." So a lot of the times, like some were sold, and then they WhatsApp me and said there was no signature in there. Could you please sign it?
Oh, yes.
So it's so special. Like of course, I did it for like my family and all that and close friends, but to have like customers who I just met, to one that it really touches me. So it's very inspiring.
Right. And the way you do it, you can do that. Like, for instance, if you did do Amazon, you wouldn't be able to do that unless you became in person with them. But if they're around the world, that's really not possible. So,
Yeah,
you can sign it and ship it anywhere in the world. That makes
correct.
that so much easier.
Yes, that's a plus point. So a lot of thought had to go into it, and I think that's the angle I wanted, and I'm really happy to have it that way. I mean, you look at us. I mean, we're talking now. When I started, would I ever have thought?
I know, right? That's the crazy thing too. Like I just searched on Instagram and then I find you across the world. I'm like, wow, like that's, the internet can be bad, but the internet can be amazing too, because we would never be
Yes,
talking this way,
yeah, I
if
know
it
it's
weren't for the internet.
incredible. I'm really honored. Thank you so much. Really, you just so amazing,
It
amazing.
is really amazing. So tell me your favorite thing to cook. Do you like something that you excuse me, we talked about your favorite recipes or something that you like to cook, like you think it's the most fun or the most memorable or holds the most memories, something like that you just like strikes you like, yeah, yeah, this, I want to make this. I love to make this.
I love cheese puffs. It's
Cheese puffs sound
it
good.
yeah, like similar to a curry puff. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with the curry puffs, but with the curry puffs you fry them,
Okay.
whereas with my cheese puffs, it's a soft dough, and basically you shred the cheese, so it's shredded mozzarella and cheddar cheese with a bit of egg inside, and you sort
Okay.
of roll it into the dough, and it's baked in the oven, and it's called sambusak. If it's an Iraqi term, sambusak, and I just love my cheese puffs. So I love cheese puff, and I love my date puffs. So you've got the harder crust will be for the date pastry. So I love my
Okay.
cheese puff and my date pastries if it comes on the dessert aspects. With regards to food, as I mentioned just now, I love chutney. So I will
Yes.
persevere the 2 or 3 hours because I love chutney. I just love the robust flavors in it. And on my salads, I love my quinoa salads, the Asian coleslaw salads. There's some recipes from my grandmother, cucumbers with brine, which I love doing. You sort of soak them in salt water and with
Sure.
salt. And then after a couple of hours, you find that the cucumbers sort of give it a lot of water. And after that, you sort of mix it in with coriander and chilies and lemon. So it's just got that
Mm,
yummy tang to it, with the sour and the chili and that
yes.
crunchy cucumber. I'm very
Sounds
hungry.
wonderful. It sounds wonderful. So now, are those cheese puffs and Dave puffs, are those recipes in the cookbook?
Absolutely. So I wouldn't miss it. Yes, yes, yes. And those are the ones that I actually have the diagrams of like how much dough, how thick is it going to be, how do you fold it. So I've got the illustrations there of me actually folding them and making them. And what also helps is the reels in my Instagram. Like I don't share the
Mm,
recipes, but I've got the steps. So like
yes.
if you're stuck, like a lot of the customers say, oh, we look at it and then we can visualize it and wow, what a difference.
Right. And thickness of dough matters. Like, I've made things too, recipes from my grandma or whatever, but thickness of dough matters. And those kind of things
Yes.
actually make the recipe work or not work. How to matters.
You're absolutely right. Yes, yes.
Mhm.
Too thick because if it's too much, then it's too thick, and then it just sort of sits on the cheese. So all that, it's technical. I mean, sometimes
Mhm.
people don't, they look at it and they just eat it, but then you don't realize what's gone behind to actually prepare the the meal.
Exactly. That's so true. And I've done things too where it sometimes turned out a little, say I was making like a pastry cookie for my grandma's recipe. If you make it too thick, it's different. It changes the recipe, it changes the taste, it changes the texture. So it's not even just does it turn out, it changes the whole entire thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It looks like you've got a lot of recipes on your end from your grandma.
Yeah, I do. I do. My grandma was a fantastic cook. And she was one of those two that didn't write things down. It was just like, oh, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But she could make amazing food from, things that you wouldn't expect. She just was one of those people that was gifted with cooking. And it was fun to learn from her. And I still have recipe cards where when she did write them down,
How
I still
lovely.
have
How
them, which is
lovely.
super
That's
fun to have.
precious.
Yeah. I mean, they got, food stains on them and stuff like that, but it's super
Yes.
fun.
But
Mhm.
those are priceless. Like, I had, when you're
Yeah.
saying them as food stains, in my cookbook, I've actually got one page which I wanted to put in with all my recipes. And there
Mm.
were recipes that I wrote over the years. So there's one page that you'll see all my handwriting and as just
Yeah.
food stains. So it came to and the food stains and it's a collage of all that. But it's priceless,
It
it's
is.
that's
It
where
is.
it all pours from.
Right. And I always think about food as it's a tradition. There's feelings in it. There's memories in it. And each time you make it, it's not just the experience of tasting the food. You have all of those experiences that flood you. at the same time as you're eating them. So it's an emotional
Yeah.
connection with the food as well. So it's really quite
Yes.
amazing. Mhm.
Yeah, my quoted my father in the book. He says, "There's no shortcuts to cooking. There's no
Right.
shortcuts. You either do it right, and you reap what you do. Put in is what you get in the end, the final product.
Absolutely. That's so true. It really is. And, the shortcuts, if you do have sometimes it's not going to taste as good. Like if you, for instance, maybe use do you ever use any like packaged sauces or anything like that? Or do you kind of strictly do homemade everything?
Everything's done from scratch in the grinder and in the blender, so it's all the raw produce. Everything's blended and ground from scratch.
Right.
Yes.
Which takes more time for sure.
Yes, yes, you got to make sure you have yourself a good blender. I mean, I've had a few conker on me have okay, so you got to get a blender. But I
What's
like
your
to use all
favorite
the fresh.
kitchen tool?
I like my KitchenAid. I like
Oh, yes.
using my
I like KitchenAid too.
so that comes in handy. But sometimes you can just go into a simple handheld blender. A lot of my cakes, I mean, a lot of them I didn't venture out into a KitchenAid and say, oh, I needed that. I would just use a simple KitchenAid hand blender or a regular hand blender to get all that pastry and the flour and all mixed up and stuff like that. And a simple NutriBullet sometimes would help with just the blending. If you've got
Mm.
the privilege of getting that KitchenAid for braiding your bread and stuff and doing the dough, then it depends. But I think there's some great appliances out there today that really help
Oh, yeah.
make our
Yeah.
job a lot easier in the kitchen.
Absolutely. Like my KitchenAid, which actually mine actually did die. So I do have to get a new one. Unfortunately, they're so expensive. But I love the dough
Yes,
hook on there. Does yours have the dough
yes,
hook?
yes, yes,
Yes.
yes. The world of difference.
The dough hook is great. Yeah. Like my grandma got a recipe from my dad's mom from Finland, which is
Wow.
a hula bread, it's called. And you have to do a lot of kneading of it, but the dough hook really makes it a lot easier to make. But
I
if you
can
don't have that,
imagine.
I mean, there's a lot of kneading that goes into it.
I know. I know. You
And I
build your
usually
muscles, right?
it does, it does. But so yeah, I usually make that at Christmas time because that's when it was always made in my family. So I'm like, I need to get a new KitchenAid before Christmas so I can make it with the dough hook again.
It sounds yummy.
Yes, it's fun. I love doing recipes too like that were like recipes from what my dad enjoyed his mom making. Like that's one of the recipes that she made and the
Yes.
tarts at Christmas, it's fun to
Wow.
keep pulling those recipes down from your family and giving it
Yes.
to your children because my children are like
Yeah.
that too. And they want those same foods every Christmas, like,
Yes.
oh yeah, now we get this, we get that.
Tradition. You know what I'm saying? It's tradition. Like Jewish New Year's around the corner. So we'll have our cheese pies, we'll have our apple jam, we'll have our date. It's tradition. And I mean, so you don't lose. So if you the continuity continues. So I think that's why a lot of my family members and a lot of the community, that's great. Like you've documented it now, it's
Mhm.
in stone, literally. So it carries on. So I said, yeah. And soul rest in peace. My mom, she passed on about 7 years ago. So her
Oh,
recipes are in the book and
yes.
holds a close place to my heart. Yeah, and they're special. So I've got it there. And it's nice to have it all there. It brings back the times when we're in the kitchen and cooking and things like that. So that's one of the reasons that also pushed me to get the book done.
Oh, absolutely. So, do you have any other cookbook authors or chefs that were your inspiration, or were they mostly people in your family, like your grandma or your mom, or
I would say so. I would say it's basically family. Like, I got married. I lived with mother-in-law for a couple of years. So I picked up a lot of the recipes then and from my mom before that. And coming from a Jewish background, we're very like Friday nights, our Sabbath and things like that. We'll stick to the Sephardic food and being born in Singapore, I love the Asian foods. So
Mhm.
we incorporated that, as I mentioned earlier on. So I didn't really need to sort of source out other cooks and
Mm,
things like that because I really had the best around me. So I
yes.
know that sounds a bit, but that's the truth. So everything was at home, everything was catered at home, and we were happy.
Well, it's very authentic. I think that, and it's, you know, you got the emotional connection, the family community. It's great. And it's great that you can now project that out to the world in the form of your cookbook and be like, this is what we made. It's kind of like encompassing all your past and present cultures and just these beautiful memories. So it's really quite a beautiful thing. And it's awesome that you made it.
Yes, you've actually summed it up. That's absolutely that's what it is. True.
Yeah, it really is. So, is there anything else that you wanted to mention that we haven't talked about at this point? Do you feel like we covered all the topics that you would love to talk about?
Well, I think we've covered, been amazing, like diversified on most of the topics. I mean, how it started, why I did it, how do I
Mhm.
want to sell my book and get it out there, the reasons and all behind it. I mean, everyone who contributed towards the book, I mean, played an important part. And I've got like little testimonials in the book of people who have helped and who I hope close to me who have assisted me with the book. And it's it's a legacy. I tell the
Mhm.
children, I said this is a legacy and that's to be cherished and appreciated. And that's why it was done. And I just want to share that with the whole world if I could, if they could just get their hands on it and see what I see in that book because it's remarkable. It's a remarkable
Absolutely.
production.
It really is. And what an amazing accomplishment too. Like you said, it's very daunting, but now that you look back on it, you're like, wow, I did this. I created this and how wonderful.
Yes, and you have your children saying, Mom, I'm so proud of you. Like, it's so lovely. Like, I had a lady, a friend of mine was visiting Singapore and he bought the book
Mm,
for his mom. And she
nice.
sent me a voice note a couple of days ago from New York. And she says, I've never met you, but my son came back from Singapore with the most amazing gift I have ever received. And he
Oh,
mentioned, yeah, and I like, I don't know the one, but she touched me and she said, I've got tears in my eyes to see this. And he told
oh,
me that you cooked each and every recipe and what you've put into it. And she says,
yes.
Rose, I can't wait to start because I love cooking and it's just the most, every page that I turn, she said, and I live in New York and we get the best of books. She said, I can't believe what I've got my hands on. So it was
Oh,
very inspirational. So, things like that. It's lovely.
very lovely. That's an amazing story. And it's something you'll never forget when you connect with those people. It's just very, very awesome. So
Yes.
that's so great. But this has been amazing. And thank you so much for sharing all of that. And everyone, don't forget to look down in the podcast show notes where you can find where to find her. But again, Rose's family favorites. And I do want to mention the favorites as Favourites because in America we don't have the U. So people need to make sure they put the U in there because we spell
Yes.
it
Thank
differently.
you. Appreciate that. You're right. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much. And you have an amazing day. It was great to chat with you.
Thank you. Likewise. Thank you so much for the call and your time. Much appreciated, really.
Yes. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.